Friendsify, you want to watch super hit movie Maleficent in English? Then you must like this video. If you are visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Friends, in today's video, the movie we're going to talk about is called Maleficent. We will talk about what this movie is and where you can watch it, all the interesting facts about this movie in today's video. I am going to tell you, also going to give you all the information on which OTT platform or on which satellite channel you will get to watch this movie. Also, we will talk in detail about the technical department, music department, pre-production, filming, post-production, budget, box office, collection of this film. We will also talk about the story of this film, and I will also give you a small review of the story of this film. Apart from this, we will discuss about the facts of this film's storyline, starcast actors' performance in the film, and which character has played which role. That's why I request you, friends, to watch this video till the end, so start the video. Maleficent is a 2014 American fantasy film starring Angelina Jolie. East had a titled character and live-action retelling of her villainous role in Walt Disney's 1959 animated film Sleeping Beauty, itself an adaptation of Charles Perrault's 1697 fairy tale. The film is directed by Robert Stromberg from a screenplay by Linda Woolverton. It also stars Sharlto Copley, Elle Fanning, Sam Riley, Imelda Staunton, Juno Temple, and Leslie Manville in supporting roles. Maleficent came under development as an animated project in 2003, before it was changed to a live-action feature in 2006, following Disney's acquisition of Pixar. Tim Burton was originally attached to direct the film, but eventually left and was replaced by Stromberg in his directorial debut. Jolie signed on to play the title role in January 2012 and also served as the film's executive producer, alongside Michael Vieira, Don Hahn, Palak Patel, Matt Smith, and Sarah Bradshaw. The rest of the main cast joined between March and May 2012. Principal photography took place at Pinewood Studios in Buckinghamshire, England, from June to October 2012. Maleficent premiered in El Capitan Theater in Hollywood on May 28, 2014, and was released in the United States theatrically on May 30th by Walt Disney Studios Motion Pictures. It received mixed reviews from critics, who praised Jolie's performance and visual effects, with criticism aimed at the script and Stromberg's direction. The film was a commercial success, grossing over $758 million worldwide, and became the fourth highest-grossing film of 2014, as well as Jolie's highest-grossing film. Amongst Disney's live-action adaptations, Maleficent is the seventh most expensive and sixth highest-grossing film to date. It also received an Academy Award nomination for Best Costume Design at the 87th Academy Awards. A sequel, titled Maleficent, Mistress of Evil, was released in 2019. Plot: Maleficent is a powerful fairy living in the moors, a magical forest realm. As a child, she meets a human boy named Stefan, and they fall in love with each other. However, as they get older, they grow apart, with Stefan's love overshadowed by his ambition to be king, while Maleficent becomes protector of the Moors. When King Henry attempts to conquer the Moors, Maleficent mortally wounds him. On his deathbed, he declares whoever kills her will be king and marry his daughter Leela. Stefan visits Maleficent and drugs her. Unwilling to kill her, Stefan instead uses a bracelet made of iron, which is lethal to fairies, to burn off her wings and presents them as proof of her death. While distraught by her loss, Maleficent saves Diaval, a trapped raven, from a farmer by turning him into a human. Diaval offers his service and tells her of Stefan's coronation. Infuriated over the betrayal, Maleficent grows cruel and bitter, ruling the Moors with an iron fist. Years later, Diaval informs Maleficent about the christening of Stefan's newborn daughter, Aurora. Maleficent arrives uninvited while three pixies, Knotgrass, Flittle, and Thistlewit, are bestowing magic gifts and places a curse on Aurora. Before the sun sets on Aurora's 16th birthday, Aurora will prick her finger on the spindle of a spinning wheel and fall into a death-like sleep. Maleficent mocks Stefan's plea for mercy, but states Aurora's curse can be broken by true love's kiss, which she and Stefan both believe is non-existent. Stefan orders the pixies to hide and protect Aurora in a forest cottage until after her 16th birthday. He also destroys every spinning wheel in the kingdom, hiding their remnants in the castle dungeon. He then sends his army after Maleficent, but she surrounds the Moors with a wall of thorns. Over the years, Stefan begins mass manufacturing iron weapons nonstop and grows obsessed with killing Maleficent to the point of insanity, even refusing to see his wife on her deathbed. Maleficent and Diaval watch Aurora grow from afar and secretly begin taking over care of her from the incompetent pixies. After several face-to-face encounters with Maleficent, whom she regards as her fairy godmother, Aurora bonds with her and regularly visits the moors. Realizing she does not have the heart to hurt Aurora, Maleficent privately and unsuccessfully attempts undoing Aurora's curse, forgetting she made no power on Earth able to do so. Meanwhile, Aurora meets Philip, a prince from the neighboring kingdom, and both are mildly attracted to each other. Aurora gains Maleficent's permission to live in the moors before her 16th birthday. The next day, however, the pixies are forced to reveal Aurora's lineage and curse when she informs them. Heartbroken, Aurora confronts Maleficent and rides to her father's castle, where Stefan locks her up, angered that the pixies did not do their job. As the sun sets, the curse's power calls to Aurora and hypnotically draws Aurora to the dungeon, where Aurora pricks her finger on a spindle of a rebuilt magic spinning wheel and falls into a death-like sleep. Hoping to save her, Maleficent and Diaval abduct Philip and infiltrate the castle. Despite the pixies urging him, Philip's kiss is not enough. Afterward, Maleficent tearfully kisses Aurora, awakening her with true maternal love. As Maleficent, Aurora, and Diaval attempt to leave, Stefan and his guards ambush them. Maleficent transforms Diaval into a dragon, but both are subdued. Aurora finds and releases Maleficent's caged wings, which reattach themselves to Maleficent, allowing her to fight back. Maleficent drags Stefan to the top of a tower. Unwilling to kill him, she announces the fight is over and leaves, but Stefan tackles her from behind, dragging them both off. She saves herself with her wings, while he loses hold and falls to his death. With Stefan gone, Maleficent brings down the Thorn Wall, returns the Moors to their former glory, and crowns Aurora their new ruler, uniting the two kingdoms. Aurora also starts a relationship with Philip. Cast Angelina Jolie as Maleficent, a fierce and vindictive protector of the Moors, who, in revenge for the betrayal by her former lover Stefan, places a curse on his daughter Aurora. Unlike her animated counterpart, this version of the character is portrayed more sympathetically. As the film progresses, Maleficent turns from a victim into a villain, following Stefan's betrayal, and finally into a hero because of the maternal feelings she develops for Aurora. Jolie described her character as slightly insane, extremely vibrant, a little wicked, and has a big sense of humor, so she's quite full on. She's one of those characters that, for me, you couldn't do halfway. She further admitted that Maleficent was one of the most difficult characters that she had ever played because she represents all sides of what it is to be human, even though she is not. For me, the journey of playing her has been much heavier, much more emotional, and much more difficult an experience than I expected. Isabel Malloy as young Maleficent. Ella Purnell as teen Maleficent. Elle Fanning as Aurora, also known as Sleeping Beauty. An innocent, pure-hearted, and free-spirited daughter of Stefan and Layla who falls under Maleficent's curse. Fanning described her character as very free-spirited, and since she has been kept away from normal life, she's very open to things and innocent, but that's what makes her very likable and charming. Robert Stromberg highlighted the contrast between Aurora and Maleficent, which he described as the beacon of light versus darkness. It reminds me a little of the girl plucking petals from the flower in Frankenstein. It's such a wonderful contrast, and the joy in making this film was bringing those two elements together and discovering things that we normally wouldn't know. Vivienne Jolie Pitt as 5-year-old Aurora. Janet McTeer as an elderly Aurora who serves as the film's narrator. Sharlto Copley as Stefan, Aurora's ambitious and vengeful father, and Maleficent's former childhood friend, lover, who cuts off the latter's wings to become the king. Unlike his animated counterpart, this version of the character is portrayed in a more antagonistic light. Commenting on his character, Copley said that it was an opportunity to play a character that was almost like a cautionary tale for men. To have a character like Stefan, who has what most men have, which is a desire to be ambitious and driven and the proverbial king of his castle. He literally becomes the king of his castle, but is prepared to sacrifice his true love to get there. It was an interesting character and opportunity to play that kind of male ego running away with itself. Michael Higgins as young Stefan. Jackson Buse as teen Stefan. Leslie Manville, Imelda Staunton, and Juno Temple as Flittle, Knotgrass, and Thistlewit, a trio of incompetent and inept pixies whom Stefan charges with taking care of Aurora until her 16th birthday. These versions of the characters are markedly different from their animated counterparts, named Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather, with their role being reduced to comic relief. Commenting on her character, Manville said that Flittle is incredibly proud of her special magical power that allows her to turn things blue. She can turn everything blue, and she thinks everything should be blue as well. Staunton described Knotgrass as the most important pixie, in her own head. Very bossy, very organized, has to control everything. There are 3 pixies, and she is the self-appointed grown-up among them. According to Temple, Thistlewit is the youngest member, and she is definitely more away with the fairies than the other 2. She's more distracted by nature. She wants to smell flowers, and she wants to dance around, so she's a much younger free spirit. Sam Riley as Diaval, Maleficent's shape-shifting raven companion. Riley described his character as Maleficent's loyal ally who can fly to places and spy for her. Their relationship blooms and Diaval develops an affection for her. He's the only character who's capable of telling her when she becomes a little overwrought and who really knows what she's thinking. Stromberg elaborated that Diaval is the conscience in the ear of Maleficent at all times. He helps her down the path of finding out who she is. He comes at the lowest point in Maleficent's life and becomes, in addition to Aurora, the other character that really pulls Maleficent out of her dark hole. The film also features Brenton Thwaites as Philip, a prince who befriends and falls in love with Aurora. Kenneth Cranham portrays King Henry, Stefan's predecessor and Layla's father, whose efforts to conquer the Moors get him slain by Maleficent. Hannah New portrays Princess Layla, King Henry's daughter, Stefan's wife, and Aurora's mother. New described her character as a demure, untouchable princess. Production. Development. The idea for Maleficent was conceived during Don Hahn's meeting with the Disney's animation department in 2003, where it was pitched as an animation project revolving around the origin of the eponymous antagonist from Walt Disney's animated film Sleeping Beauty, 1959. The timing of the idea was inspired by the just-released Broadway musical Wicked, 34. While opening the musical adaptation of Mary Poppins in the West End of London in December 2004, Hahn met with Tim Burton to pitch him several movie ideas for Disney, including Maleficent, which Burton was instantly interested in. Simultaneously, Sean Bailey, who was an independent producer at the time, began developing the same concept for a live-action feature, which he envisioned as a Disney version of Michael Corleone in The Godfather. Have a character do something that's empirically terrible, curse a child, but set it up in such a way that you felt differently about it. Bailey wanted Angelina Jolie for the role of Maleficent and mentioned the idea during lunch with Jolie's manager, receiving a positive response within a few hours. When Bailey presented his concept to the Disney executives, they told him about Hahn's project and suggested they team up. Jolie's interest in the title role prompted the filmmakers to consider moving Maleficent from animation to live action, which they did after Disney acquired Pixar and reshuffled the animation department in 2006. The project was eventually suspended due to Burton being busy working on Sweeney Todd, The Demon Barber of Fleet Street, and Alice in Wonderland. By the summer of 2009, as Alice in Wonderland entered post-production, Burton renewed his interest in Maleficent. Around the same time, Hahn approached Linda Woolverton, who had just collaborated with Burton on Alice, to write the script. Burton dismissed his involvement with the film as a rumor in February 2010, but the following month, The Guardian reported that he would helm the project, with The Hollywood Reporter confirming Woolverton as the film's writer. At that point, Richard D. Zanuck also joined the production as a producer until his death in 2012. After Woolverton boarded the project, the creative team, which included Woolverton, Burton, Hahn, and Zanuck, began developing the story, with several drafts made over the course of almost a year. In November 2010, Burton confirmed that he would direct Maleficent, but he had withdrawn by May 2011 due to his commitment to Dark Shadows. After Burton's departure, David Yates, Darren Aronofsky, and David O. Russell were considered to take over as director. Guillermo del Toro also expressed interest in directing Maleficent, citing the original 1959 animated film as one of his favorite Disney features. By September 2011, Joe Roth had joined the project as a producer, and in January 2012, Deadline. Hollywood reported that Robert Stromberg, who had been the production designer on Alice in Wonderland, would helm Maleficent in his directorial debut. Palak Patel, the film's executive producer, said that after finishing Alice, Stromberg really wanted to direct. "We said, okay, but we've got Oz the Great and Powerful and we need a production designer. Why don't you do Oz, then we'll make a movie." In the middle of shooting Oz, Maleficent came in. Writing Linda Woolverton's screenplay went through at least 15 versions as the film progressed in production. Stromberg said, "I met many times with Linda Woolverton, the writer. We did lots of roundtable discussions and sort of cut out the fat as much as we could and sort of purified the storyline as much as we could." Paul Dini also performed rewrites on the project with Stromberg and was credited in early press. In some earlier versions of the story, Stefan was the half-human, half-fairy bastard son of King Henry. The version of the screenplay that went into shooting originally included two characters called Queen Ulla and King Kinloch, the fairy queen and fairy king of the Moors and the aunt and uncle of Maleficent. Miranda Richardson and Peter Capaldi were cast and shot the Queen Ulla and King Kinloch scenes, but their roles were cut in the editing process, together with more than 15 minutes of the first act of the film. Stromberg said, "We spent a bit more time originally in the fairy world before we got into the human side of things. We wanted to get the film under 2 hours. So we cut about 15 minutes out of the first act, and then that had to be seamed together with some pretty basic reshoots." Stromberg later claimed in an interview that he employed an age-old emotional storytelling for the film and called it the biggest thrill against all technology advances. And the way we play with that is we have somebody who's perhaps in love but betrayed and doesn't believe that true love exists. So the moral to it is we can all feel dark ourselves but not to lose hope because there is light in places where we might not be expecting, he explained. Casting Angelina Jolie was the first and only choice for the role of Maleficent. According to Don Hahn, they never made a list of other choices because she seemed like she understood the flesh and blood of the character and could play the nuance. Both Sean Bailey and Joe Roth further stated that the film would not have been made if Jolie had refused. Jolie entered negotiations by March 2010 and signed on for the role in late January 2012. Which she personally confirmed during the 62nd Berlin International Film Festival the following month. She was also hired as the film's executive producer. Jolie was initially unsure of making a film about somebody who curses a baby, but was still interested in the idea because of her fascination with the character of Maleficent as a child, and ended up being very moved by the script. Her decision to accept the role was also influenced by the persuasions of her children and brother. Jolie earned about $33 million for her role, which made her the highest-paid actress of 2013. In March 2012, Elle Fanning was reported to be in talks for the role of Aurora. She was the only choice of the filmmakers after they saw her performance as Alice Daynard in Super 8 2011. Roth said that he brought Fanning to the studio literally the next day, told her all about the project, told her about Angelina Jolie, and she said, "I'm in." Later that month, Jim Sturgis and Gail Garcia Bernal were reported to be trying out for the role of Diaval, with Jude Law, who had co-starred with Jolie in Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow, in negotiations to play Stefan. Sharlto Copley was eventually cast as Stefan by May 2012, and a few days later, The Hollywood Reporter announced the casting of Imelda Staunton as Knotgrass, Kenneth Cranham as King Henry, Sam Riley as Diaval, Leslie Manville as Flittle, and Miranda Richardson as Queen Ulla, whose role was deleted from the final cut, of Maleficent. And later that month, Juno Temple and Brenton Thwaites were cast as Thistlewit and Prince Philip. Anya Taylor-Joy later revealed that she also auditioned for the role of teenage Maleficent. In August 2012, Vivian Jolie Pitt, Jolie's real-life daughter with Brad Pitt, was announced to play 5-year-old Aurora. She was cast due to being the only child on the set who was not scared of Jolie in her full Maleficent costume. Jolie initially offered the role to her other daughter, Shiloh, but she refused. 2 other children of Jolie, Pax and Zahara, ended up appearing as extras in the christening scene. Toby Regbo was originally cast as the teenage version of Stefan, but after the filmmakers decided that they needed a younger performer, he was replaced by Michael Higgins. By November 2012, Eleanor Worthington Cox and Isabel Malloy were confirmed to play younger versions of Aurora and Maleficent, respectively. Malloy was brought to the attention of the filmmakers by the casting director, who saw her performance as the title character in the West End production of Matilda the Musical and ended up doing 3 auditions, including a screen test, before she was cast. By October 2013, when it was decided to reshoot the film's prologue, Ella Purnell, who originally auditioned for the role of Aurora, replaced Isley as teenage Maleficent. Purnell's casting was personally approved by Jolie, although they never met in person during the film's production. Filming. Principal photography began on June 13, 2012 at Pinewood Studios. Some filming took place in the Buckinghamshire countryside near Turville. Costume design. Anna B. Shepard was in charge of designing costumes for the film. She was hired late in pre-production and had about 8 weeks before filming began to create all the costumes from scratch, which she described as a lot of pain, a lot of work, a lot of indecision. Shepard and her team drew inspiration for the designs from French and Italian art of the Renaissance period, including paintings, sketches, and sculptures, creating more than 2,000 costumes by hand. For the character of Maleficent, a separate group within the costume department, named Team Maleficent, was formed to focus solely on her outfits. For Aurora's costumes, Shepard wanted to move away from the hourglass silhouettes of the character's animated counterpart in favor of more innocent and closer to nature designs, which she felt would be both more natural and age-appropriate for Elle Fanning, who was 14 at the time of filming. Reshoots. John Lee Hancock assisted Stromberg with reshoots for the film. Hancock, who had just finished overseeing the final post-production stages of Saving Mr. Banks, was approached by producer Joe Roth, with whom he had worked on Snow White and the Huntsman. Roth said, "He's not directing. He wrote pages, and I hired a first-time director, and it's good to have him on set." Roth was asked why a film of this magnitude was entrusted to a novice director, and he noted that Stromberg won Academy Awards for production design on Avatar and Alice in Wonderland. Roth said, "The movie is gorgeous to look at, and the last 75 minutes are really entertaining. The issue was the opening, which was reshot over 8 days." Visual effects. As a previous production designer, Stromberg sought to balance the use of practical and computer-generated effects. For example, while Maleficent's horns and facial prosthetics were created by makeup artist Rick Baker, Digital Domain took facial capture of Imelda Staunton, Leslie Manville, and Juno Temple for the 3 pixies to be generated with high authenticity with the help of special rigging by Disney Research in Zurich. For the visuals, Stromberg wanted to make it a bit more grounded and not too surreal, because it could be distracting from the simplicity of the story. He also regretted not employing bigger sets and allowing actors to work in a more tangible environment on real sets with real lights. Music. Main article, Maleficent. James Newton Howard was hired to score the film in October 2012. The film marked Howard's first live-action Disney film score, as he had previously scored 3 films from Walt Disney Animation Studios, which include Dinosaur, 2000, Atlantis, The Lost Empire 2001, and Treasure Planet 2002. On January 2014, recording artist Lana Del Rey was announced as covering the song Once Upon a Dream from the 1959 film Sleeping Beauty as the title song for Maleficent. The song Once Upon a Dream is based on the Grand Waltz from ballet Sleeping Beauty written by Russian composer Tchaikovsky. The single was released on January 26, 2014 during the 56th Grammy Awards and was made available for free for a limited time through Google Play. The soundtrack album, featuring Howard's score and Del Rey's cover of Once Upon a Dream, was released on May 26, 2014 by Walt Disney Records. Marketing. On August 10, 2013, as part of the live-action motion picture panel of the 2013 Disney D23 Expo in the Anaheim Convention Center at Anaheim, California, Disney unveiled its first look of Maleficent by revealing the new logo of the film's title and a 1-minute clip from the film. Angelina Jolie made a surprise visit to the expo and talked with the attendees about her fascination with Disney's Sleeping Beauty as a child, her working experience with the filmmakers on the film, and her love of Disney. She also remarked on how she scared little girls when she was in costume, makeup, and acting during shooting. This led to the decision to hire her own daughter, Vivienne Jolie Pitt, for the role of the young Princess Aurora, since she would not be scared of her during principal photography. Walt Disney Pictures released the teaser poster for Maleficent on November 12, 2013, featuring Jolie in costume and makeup akin to the character's depiction in the original film. The first trailer was released the following day, on November 13th. The first teaser trailer was attached to Thor: The Dark World, The Hunger Games: Catching Fire, Frozen, and Vampire Academy: Blood Sisters. 2 more trailers were released in January 2014, revealing Maleficent's appearance. A third trailer featured Lana Del Rey singing Once Upon a Dream. The final trailer was released on March 18, 2014. Starting April 18, 2014, Disney's Hollywood Studios and Disney California Adventure previewed the film inside the ABC Sound Studio and It's Tough to Be a Bug theaters, respectively. A tie-in novelization of the film written by Elizabeth Rudnick was published by Disney Publishing Worldwide on April 29, 2014. Disney Infinity 2.0 featured Maleficent as a playable figure using the look from the film. Release. Maleficent was originally scheduled for a March 14, 2014 release before it was changed to July 2, 2014. By September 2013, the film's release date was postponed to May 30, 2014, as Pixar's The Good Dinosaur faced production issues and was delayed to 2015. A private exhibition of props and costumes from the film was held at Kensington Palace in London on May 8, 2014, serving as a fundraiser for Great Ormond Street Hospital. The world premiere of Maleficent took place at the El Capitan Theater in Hollywood on May 28, 2014. On November 22, 2018, a one-time special screening of the film was held in Sofia, Bulgaria at New Bulgarian University, where Bulgarian actor Peter Bakov does the dubbing for every character in the film by changing his voice from male to female live. He later performs part of the film trailer live during the semifinals on the Got Talent show in Bulgaria in 2019, which leads him to the season finale. He would later be cast as Prince Philip in the Bulgarian dub of the sequel Maleficent, Mistress of Evil. In September 2020, the film returned to cinemas in the United Kingdom following their reopening from closure due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Box office. Maleficent earned a gross of $241.4 million in the U.S. and Canada and $570.1 million in other countries for a worldwide total of $758.5 million against a budget of $180 million. Calculating in all expenses, Deadline Hollywood estimated that the film made a profit of $190.77 million, making it the 6th most profitable film of 2014. Worldwide, in its opening weekend, the film earned $175.5 million, $9 million of which were from IMAX locations. It is also the biggest debut among films starring Angelina Jolie, and the actress' highest-grossing film of all time worldwide, as well as the fourth highest-grossing 2014 film, behind Transformers: Age of Extinction, The Hobbit: The Battle of the Five Armies, and Guardians of the Galaxy, and the 15th Disney-distributed film to surpass the $700 million mark at the worldwide box office. The film is also one of 4 Walt Disney Studios releases in 2014 to gross over $500 million, the other titles being Guardians of the Galaxy, Captain America, The Winter Soldier, and Big Hero 6. In North America, Maleficent earned $4.2 million in Thursday night showings, surpassing the midnight or late-night grosses of previous live-action fantasy films, Alice in Wonderland, Oz the Great and Powerful, and Snow White and the Huntsman. By the end of its opening day, including late-night Thursday earnings, the film earned $24.3 million, similar to Oz, but ahead of Snow White and the Huntsman and behind Alice. Maleficent finished its debut weekend at first place with $69.4 million, $6.7 million of which was earned from IMAX locations and 35% of which was earned from 3D showings, which exceeded Disney's expectations of a $60 million, and making it the largest opening weekend performance for a live-action film starring Jolie, a record previously held by her 2008 film Wanted, as well as the third highest opening weekend for a solo female star behind the first 2 films in the Hunger Games series. Disney reported that 46% of ticket buyers in Thursday previews were male, while weekend reports said family audiences accounted for 45% of the film's total audience, and couples and teens accounted for 38% and 18%, respectively. Female audiences and moviegoers over 25 years old held respective proportions of 60% and 51%. Dave Hollis, head of Walt Disney Studios Motion Pictures, attributed this success to some momentum and great word of mouth. During its first week, the film earned $93.8 million, ahead of Snow White yet behind Oz and Alice. In its second weekend, Maleficent dropped by 50.6% to $34.3 million, finishing in second place. It experienced a smaller second weekend drop than Snow White, yet still bigger than Oz and Alice. In North America, Maleficent is the 8th highest grossing 2014 film. Maleficent opened outside North America on the same weekend as North America, earning $20.1 million from 35 territories in its first 2 days, May 28 to 29, 2014. During its opening weekend, the film topped the box office with $106.1 million from 47 territories. Its largest opening weekends were in China, $22.2 million, Mexico, $14.0 million, and Russia and the CIS, $13.0 million. On the second weekend of release, Maleficent fell to $61.7 million, earning from 52 markets. It was in first place at the box office outside North America on 3 weekends. Its first, third, $39.2 million, and fourth, $47.9 million. Maleficent is the 4th highest grossing 2014 film and Angelina Jolie's highest grossing live-action film. In total earnings, the film's top markets after North America are Japan, $57.6 million, China, $47.7 million, Mexico, $46.2 million, Russia, $37.7 million, Brazil, $33.2 million, the United Kingdom, $31.7 million, Venezuela, $24.5 million, and Italy, $19.1 million. It was also the most watched film at the Maltese box office in 2014, enjoying an 18-week run. Commercial analysis. Dave Lewis, writing for HitFix, predicted that although Disney fairy tales and Angelina Jolie's performance might attract audiences, Maleficent would not gross even as much as Oz the Great and Powerful, explaining that the film was released on the same time frame with competitive releases such as X-Men, Days of Future Past, Godzilla, and A Million Ways to Die in the West, though it outperformed those films later on. Box Office wrote that Maleficent had a successful marketing campaign, featured Jolie in the title role, and its female-driven themes and plot aimed at women. However, the site also noted that the film would have to compete with other summer releases, and the character of Maleficent may not attract young children. Todd Cunningham of The Wrap shared the same opinion, writing, "The film's connecting with parents and that Jolie's considerable star power is having a big impact. Wells Fargo's Marcia Riviker predicted that Maleficent might be too dark and scary to be profitable and was likely to force Disney into a write-down, as reported by the New York Times. While RBC Capital Markets' David Bank commented that it's definitely in the not a sure thing bucket. Walt's cheat sheet explained that the film approached to a more grown-up and sinister aspect of the classic and targeted for an older audience like young adults. It's just too scary for younger children, the site wrote. Screen Rant added that the PG rating of the film would fill a void in the marketplace, which is currently without a traditional family-friendly option. Box Office Mojo primarily compared the film with 2012's Snow White and the Huntsman, another film that also focused on a fairy tale villain, predicting that Maleficent has a good chance of matching Snow White's gross in North America box office. The film, however, ended up grossing double the amount projected. Variety wrote that the film's opening weekend outperforming initial box office projections was later attributed by analysts in part to Disney's successful marketing to the potent demographic, female audiences, much like the studio accomplished with Frozen, in which both films feature a strong female lead. Disney argued that a lack of family-friendly options in the marketplace would bode well for Maleficent's box office performance in its 2 first weeks of release. The cost of the film was offset by a rebate from the UK in the amount of $23,535,108, $37 million in 2012, the period in which it was shot. Home media. Maleficent was released by Walt Disney Studios Home Entertainment on Blu-ray, DVD, Blu-ray 3D, and digital download on November 4, 2014. The film topped the home video sales chart in its first week of release. As of February 2015, Maleficent has made over $74 million in total home video sales. It was the 7th best-selling title of 2014 with 3.6 million units sold. Maleficent was released on 4K UHD Blu-ray on September 24, 2019. Reception. Critical response. Maleficent received mixed reviews from critics, who praised the performances, especially Jolie's, visual effects and costumes, but criticized the script and Stromberg's direction. The review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes reported that the film had a 54% approval rating based on 277 reviews, with an average rating of 5.7/10. According to its consensus, Angelina Jolie's magnetic performance outshines Maleficent's dazzling special effects. Unfortunately, the movie around them fails to justify all that impressive effort. On Metacritic, the film has a weighted average score of 56 out of 100 based on 44 critics, indicating mixed or average reviews. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an A grade on a scale of A+ to F. The New York Times stated, "With 2 shorn wings and an astonishing maternal kiss, Maleficent demolishes stereotypes that were only tweaked in Frozen." Kate Taylor of the Globe and Mail was very positive about the film, writing that it surprises not for its Baroque visions of a colorful woodland enlivened by joyous fairies and a forbidding castle peopled by unhappy humans, but rather for the thematic richness of its story, gloriously personified by Angelina Jolie in the title role. While criticizing the overuse of CGI and 3D effects, she particularly praised the positive message of the film and Jolie's performance. She concluded her review with, "Long live the feminist revisionist backstory." On the contrary, Keith Staskiewicz, writing for the Entertainment Weekly, awarded the film a B and wrote that there's a lot of levitating cliffs and odd flora. But despite their bleeding-edge digital design, the backgrounds have all the depth of the old matte-painted backgrounds of the analog days, which made the film feel classical in nature. He further commented that the characters are boiled down to their essentials. The humor is timelessly broad. Michael Phillips of the Chicago Tribune gave the film 2.5 stars, commenting that the recent formula that a new angle on a well-known fairy tale appears in the light works with Maleficent. He also said that the film is all about second thoughts, since Maleficent spends much of the film as Aurora's conflicted fairy godmother. Phillips particularly praised Jolie and Elle Fanning's acting, Rick Baker's makeup for Jolie's angular, serrated look, but criticized James Newton Howard's sloshy, pushy musical score. Robbie Collin of the Daily Telegraph wrote, This Disney reimagining of Sleeping Beauty lacks true enchantment, but Angelina Jolie saves the day. Betsy Sharkey of the Los Angeles Times wrote, "This is Jolie's film because of the Maleficent she makes. Everyone else, even Aurora, fades in her presence." J.C. Masek III of Pop Matters wrote, "Even at its silliest, Maleficent is a well-acted film, with Sharlto Copley turning in a memorable performance, and Elle Fanning proving to be an inspired choice for Aurora, Sleeping Beauty. Jolie manages to steal her own show in most every scene. Jolie is excellent as the hopeful fairy, enjoying the world she flies through. She is also brilliant as the Dark Lady, who could be a perfect counterpart to any Darth Vader, as she malevolently takes her revenge on those who have wronged her." Ann Hornaday of the Washington Post awarded the film 3.5 out of 4 stars, commenting, "Still, for all its limitations, Maleficent manages to be improbably entertaining to watch, due solely to its title character." Writing for Roger Ebert's website, Matt Zoller Seitz awarded Maleficent 3 out of 4 stars, praising the themes of the film and the acting of Jolie. Seitz also called the scene in which Maleficent discovers the loss of her wings the most traumatizing image I've seen in a Hollywood fairy tale since the Christ-like sacrifice of Aslan in 2005's The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. The review in the Globe and Mail further explained that, in the simple context of a fairy tale, Jolie does make both the terrifying horned creature and her gradual awakening heartfelt, extolling the emotional richness behind her physical acts. Richard Roper of the Chicago Sun-Times felt more negatively, assigning it a D. Although Roper praised the visuals, he criticized the acting and writing, stating that the story itself might well put you into the same type of coma that befalls the heroine. Mary Costa, who voiced Aurora in the 1959 animated motion picture, called the film a very good movie. She added that the concept and perspective are totally different than the original films, which makes it new and interesting. As for Jolie's performance, she said, "No one could have played the part of Maleficent better," concluding that she was absolutely magnificent. Rape allegory. Multiple reviewers and commentators have opined that an early scene in the movie in which Stefan drugs Maleficent and removes her wings from her unconscious body is a metaphor for rape. Haley Krischer of the Huffington Post interpreted the scene as an important reference to rape culture. "This is the horrific side of rape culture. We're so enmeshed in it that it's impossible to ignore a metaphoric rape that occurs in a Disney movie." She went on to praise the film for giving a positive and hopeful message to rape victims, ultimately allowing the woman to recover. It gives her agency. It gives her power. It allows her to reclaim the story. Monica Bartizel of The Week noted the scene's implications in her review. In its first act, Maleficent offers a dark, surprisingly adult exploration of rape and female mutilation. However, Bartizel went on to opine that the film portrayed Maleficent's actions as a rape revenge fantasy, and criticized the film for not following through on its early subtext, ultimately calling it less feminist and reductive compared to its 1959 counterpart. In Maleficent, Aurora is the product of a cold and loveless marriage and a vengeful, unhinged rapist. Her safety relies on a trio of clueless and dangerously careless fairies, and her godmother is the woman who cursed her and who had in turn been violated by her own father. Angelina Jolie addressed the issue during an interview with BBC Radio 4 on the Woman's Hour program, claiming that the subtext was intentional. The question was asked, what could make a woman become so dark and lose all sense of her maternity, her womanhood, and her softness? We were very conscious, the writer and I, that the scene was a metaphor for rape. She further explained that the answer to the question, what could bring her back, was still an extreme Disney, fun version of the story. But at the core, it is abuse, and how the abused then have a choice of abusing others or overcoming and remaining loving, open people. Sequel. Main article, Maleficent, Mistress of Evil. On June 3, 2014, Angelina Jolie hinted about the possibility of a sequel. On June 15, 2015, Disney announced the sequel with Linda Woolverton returning to write the screenplay and Joe Roth to produce the film. On April 26, 2016, it was confirmed that Jolie would reprise her role as Maleficent. On August 30th, 2017, Disney hired screenwriter Jez Butterworth to rewrite the initial script by Woolverton. 190. On October 3rd, 2017, it was reported that Joachim Running, Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Men Tell No Tales, was in talks on directing the sequel. In January 2018, the sequel was reported to start filming in spring 2018, and that Patrick Tatopoulos had joined the crew as production designer. In April 2018, Ed Skrein was announced to play the film's villain, with Elle Fanning was set to reprise her role as Aurora. On April 27, 2018, it was reported that Michelle Pfeiffer was in advanced talks to play a queen in the sequel, while the script's most recent draft was written by Noah Harpster and Micah Fitzerman-Blue. On May 2, 2018, it was reported that Harris Dickinson had joined the cast as Prince Philip, replacing Brenton Thwaites, who was unable to reprise the role due to scheduling conflicts. On May 4, 2018, it was announced that Chiwetel Ejiofor, who previously worked with Jolie in Salt, was in talks to join the cast of the sequel as a potential love interest to Maleficent. On May 17, 2018, Jen Murray was announced to join the cast. On May 23, 2018, David Gyasi was reported as joining the cast in an unspecified role. On May 29th, the movie officially started filming as the cast and synopsis were revealed. Principal photography concluded on August 24, 2018. The film was released on October 18, 2019. The Sleeping Beauty riff, Maleficent, is another overproduced summer spectacular, released into a world that has too many. It has sub-Phantom Menace, landscapes and creatures, a bombastic and unmemorable score, and the sorts of chaotic images and fast cutting that signify a lack of true filmmaking imagination. It is truly a movie made by a committee. Its direction is credited to Robert Stromberg, a longtime production designer, and its script to Beauty and the Beast scribe Linda Woolverton. But there have been reports of many studio-imposed rewrites and reshoots by director John Hancock, the Rookie. But it's powerful anyway. As the title character, a misunderstood and wronged woman, Angelina Jolie has makeup-enhanced cheekbones that could be registered as lethal weapons. Put them together with her wary cobalt eyes and ruby lips and the wings and horns that the character sports early in the picture, and you've got an image of female otherness, as eerie as Scarlett Johansson wading into black goo in Under the Skin. The film's story is an example of what The Guardian's film critic Peter Bradshaw calls that emerging post-Wicked genre, the revisionist backstory fairy tale. But it's affecting. It has a primordial edge that the clumsy filmmaking can't blunt. There are moments in Maleficent that are profoundly disturbing, in the way that ancient myths and grim fairy tales are disturbing. They strike to the heart of human experience and create the kinds of memories that young children, young girls particularly, will obsess over. Because on some level they'll know, even without the benefit of adult experience, that the film is telling them a horrible sort of truth. And at this point, I should give you the opportunity to step away from the review, see the film based on the above description, and read the rest later to see if you agree. Fair enough? Good. The tale begins with a flashback to Maleficent as a young girl fairy, befriending a farm boy who snuck into her forest on a mission of thievery. They grow close and continue to see each other, even after the king of a human stronghold on the outskirts of the forest tries to invade Maleficent's domain and then watches in shock as the heroine and her tree warrior pals lay waste to his army. As teenagers, the fairy and the human share a silhouetted lip lock on a hilltop, true love's first kiss, in the Disney parlance. He stops coming around, breaking the girl's heart. Years later, the now-adult Stefan, Sharlto Copley, overhears the now-dying king promising his realm to anyone who can kill Maleficent, and it's here that we head into the first of the film's magnificently disturbing sequences. I've read reviews complaining that we don't know enough about Maleficent and Stefan's personalities, much less the details of their relationship, which means that Stefan's betrayal comes out of nowhere, and so does not make dramatic sense. This is a fair description, or complaint, but to me, The lack of development makes the twist feel more like something that might happen in a fairy tale, not a clean-scrubbed Disney fairy tale in which every plot twist is clearly delineated, but an ancient story that kids might listen to, rapt and horrified, then interrupt to ask, why would the boy do that to someone he loved? Whereupon the adult storyteller would explain that sometimes people do cruel things to people they love because they want things. In any event, we know what's really going on in the scene. After snuggling with Maleficent on a hilltop, Stefan gives her a drink laced with a sleeping potion, prepares to murder her after she's passed out, then has a failure of nerve. He slices off her wings instead and brings them to the king as proof that he did as promised. It's a symbolic assault with sexual overtones, specifically an attack that occurs after a woman is passed out. Maleficent doesn't just lose her wings. They're stripped from her, against her will. The attack is also a maiming or disfigurement that, in this context, feels like a gender-specific physical message, drawn from a continuum that includes everything from the punitive hacking off of a woman's long hair to clitoridectomy. Jolie underwent a double mastectomy not long before the film was shot. It's hard to imagine her shooting this sequence and not putting it in a personal context. The scene of Maleficent waking up on a hilltop with huge scars in her back, then weeping with rage, is the most traumatizing image I've seen in a Hollywood fairy tale since the Christ-like sacrifice of Aslan in 2005's The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. It strikes so deep, and its impact resonates for so long after, that it makes the film's numerous missteps seem less like deal-breakers than irritants. The assault transforms Maleficent from an unabashed heroine into an anti-heroine, a straight-up bad guy, as far as the story's terrified humans are concerned, and warps Disney's vanilla 1959 film into a conflicted revenge story with an unmistakable feminist undertone. It's the deepest betrayal imaginable. Every subsequent action Maleficent takes, including casting a spell on Stefan's daughter Aurora, played as a teen by Elle Fanning, that will send her into a coma at age 16 after a finger prick by a spinning wheel needle, is driven by the trauma of that betrayal. The film has a long way to go after that, plot-wise, I mean. At a sleek 98 minutes, this is a rare summer blockbuster that's as terse as the typical cartoon feature. And while Maleficent never rises to the peak of power that it attains when the heroine awakes without her wings, and its action sequences and ostentatious creature displays are murky CGI soup, it keeps the audience unbalanced in a good way. There's wasted motion in the plotting, and a fair amount of confusion in how the script spells out what Maleficent can and can't do. If she can turn a raven into a male sidekick played by Sam Riley with a wave of her hand and create a fire-breathing dragon with similar ease later on, why doesn't she just unleash an army of monsters on the kingdom and save herself a lot of bother? But we always know what's at stake for her. We know where her head is at. Despite winning a slew of deserved awards for early performances, Jolie has never gotten the credit she deserves as both an old-fashioned glamorous movie star and a skilled, thoughtful actress. This part fuses both sides of her talent. Her mesmerizing stillness makes us pay closer attention to Maleficent's every word and gesture than the film's screenplay deserves. We feel close to Maleficent even when she's doing the ice mask of death expression showcased in trailers and in stills. We feel her conflicted feelings as she pretends to be the young Aurora's godmother, playing a role and then slowly becoming that role, just as we felt her rage at being violated and mutilated and her need to make the human kingdom, whose representatives are all male, pay for what was done in its name. I was looking forward to seeing Angelina Jolie play a Disney villain. That's not Maleficent, obviously, but what she's asked to do is still fascinating. The character starts out good, turns bad for good reason, then tries to right the wrongs she committed in the name of righting wrongs. This is a film of Hollywood storytelling cliches, including the eat-your-cake-and-have-it-too villain death that lets the heroine seem noble while still satisfying the audience's bloodlust. But it's also a film of resonant gestures and dream logic, in which ancient and contemporary predicaments jostle against each other, romantic betrayal or sexual assault, and their psychological aftermath. The fundamental differences between male and female minds, the way that patriarchal culture fuses women's sense of self-worth to their bodies. Even the tangled maternal impulses that independent single women who never wanted kids might experience when they have to care for a child. The movie is a mess, but it's a rich mess. It has weight. It matters. Years from now, you'll hear teenagers or college students bonding over having seen it as child and lost sleep over it, and its title will have acquired 3 more words, plus punctuation. Oh my God, Maleficent! The film is tonally, thematically, and visually disjointed to the point that it becomes impossible to remain fully invested. The adult moments are likely too emotionally dark and complex for a small child to connect with. Alternatively, the elements designed to keep children engaged are primarily ill-conceived and often poorly executed. The effects are equally erratic. They range from exemplary the work Rick Baker did to transform Jolie and some of the CGI to solid, much of the CGI to appalling creature designs, several of the fanimals meant to entice the kids when all is said, and done the film does not commit to what it wants to be. It seeks to tell a darker tale, but in such a way that the tacked-on happily ever after ending still applies. Aurora, the Sleeping Beauty herself, ultimately seems far too breezy about what actually were a tragic series of events in her life. As to Princess Aurora, Elle Fanning has demonstrated acting chops in the past, but she's given little more to do here than smile. The princess is just as much a cipher in this rendition as she was in the original Disney tale. The exposition tells us that this is the girl who the whole world falls in love with, but her charms are never fully fleshed out, though baby and toddler Aurora are impossible not to adore. The 16-year-old is left undeveloped. Ultimately, we are more taken with Maleficent than we are with the princess. So the fight to save the girl, who ultimately doesn't suffer much more than a catnap, fails to have an impact. In fact, other than Jolie. The film is populated by one-dimensional characters, the flower pixies who bestow their gifts upon the princess at her birth and are then charged with raising her, are the 3 characters most distinctly crafted to appeal to young kids. They are also the most difficult for adults to connect with. Imelda Stanton Knotgrass, Juno Temple Thistlewit, and Leslie Manville Flittle are clearly doing their best to service the material they've been given. However, the trio is made silly to the point of being both ridiculous and grating the tonal shifts from Jolie's Maleficent and what we are seeing from these 3, as well as the bulk of the supporting cast, is alarmingly jarring. Additionally, the 3 fairies were trusted and beloved members of the kingdom in the original Disney animated feature. They have a different backstory here, though one which makes it impossible to believe that the king and queen would entrust their baby daughter to their care. The logical missteps are a result of attempting to rework the structure of the story while still hitting up on the crucial elements and most memorable sequences. The movie is bending Maleficent to its will, and that works better in some moments than others. It should be noted that Sam Riley turns in a solid performance as Maleficent's minion Develle. When this project was first announced, it felt like an exciting undertaking. The idea, it seemed, was to create a fairy tale in which the moralist that evil isn't born, it's created. Maleficent in most renditions is vicious for its own sake, or because Hirgao was wounded via a petty perceived slight. This film was meant to reveal the events that turned her to the proverbial dark side. However, there is a character who becomes the de facto bad guy in this interpretation of the story as well, a character whose behavior is just as reprehensible as Maleficent's was in the original, if not worse one, who is driven by avarice and poisonous ambition. So what looked like it may be a film that deconstructs simply shifts the focus elsewhere and ultimately follows somewhat of a formulaic Disney fairy tale path. Having said that, the movie does offer a cautionary tale about the pitfalls of unchecked greed. It also becomes a celebration of the ability to love even when you've suffered pain, both of which are valuable lessons, ultimately. Maleficent is a missed opportunity. There are moments to enjoy here, but the muddled nature of the story and execution prevent it from fulfilling the promise of Jolie as one of popular fiction's most memorable villains. Now, almost midway through the year 2014 seems unlikely to produce many more visually arresting, brilliantly designed Stone College kid-friendly pieces of candy than Disney's Maleficent, as for its revisionist take on the travails of the iconic Sleeping Beauty villainess. However, it falls far short of something. An imaginative fan fiction scribe, let alone obvious role models John Gardner or Gregory Maguire, might have crafted from the material, uncertain of tone and bearing visible scarring from what one imagines were multiple rewrites the film. Fail-stop rub the psychology of its subject or set up a satisfying alternate history, but it's sure as nice to look at for 97 minutes boasting an impressive and impeccably costumed Angelina Jolie in the title role. It ought to prove a solid global moneymaker and merchandisement for the Mouse House. New York, June 8th. Nicole Scherzinger accepts the best performance by an actress in a leading role in a musical award for Sunset Boulevard on stage during the 78th Annual Tony Awards at Radio City Music Hall on June 8th, 2025. In New York City, photo by Theo Wargo /Getty Images for Tony Awards productions of The Four Fractured Fairy Tales, produced by Joe Roth. Oz the Great and Powerful Alice in Wonderland, Snow White and the Huntsman. Maleficent is the one that hews closest to its source material. And it's not always clear whether this helps or hinders. Directed by first-time Helmer Robert Stromberg from a script credited to Beauty and the Beast scribe Linda Woolverton. The film has a clever enough big-picture take on the Sleeping Beauty tale, yet it sputters and snags as it tries to construct a coherent emotional arc, and its reference points from the 1959 animated original feel more beautiful than inspired opening with storybook-themed voiceover narration. Maleficent sketches a realm of two rival kingdoms, not Stefan's and Hubert's, but rather the world of humans and the outlying moors, which are home to fairies, trolls, and imposing wickermen darting around the moors like a sort of sorcery. Tinkerbell is the winged young fairy Maleficent, Isabel Malloy, who strikes up an unlikely friendship and later romance with a trespassing human farman named Stephen Michael Higgins. Alas, their love is not to be as a poorly explained war breaks out between the two kingdoms. Years later, and the adult Stephen Charlotte C. Copley betrays Maleficent Jolie by drugging her and cutting off her wings, all in the name of a job promotion. To be fair, going from farm boy to king is one hell of a jump up the employment ladder. Now a woman scorned and shorn Maleficent fashions a magical staff from a twig, dons a black helmet, and takes memorable revenge on Stephen's infant daughter. Aurora granted the proper grace notes and breathing room. This sequence of events could have provided more than enough material for a dark standalone prequel. Indeed, it took George Lucas 3 full features to complete a very similar character arc for Anakin Skywalker. However, Maleficent is only just now getting started, and the next 2/3 of the film see our URSTW anti-hero hiding in the bushes outside Aurora's cabin in the woods, serving as an unlikely fairy godmother and rethinking her curse, while Aurora's bumbling guardians Leslie Manville, Imelda Stunt, and Juno Temple prove entirely incompetent babysitters already. A double Oscar winner for his work as an art director. Stromberg knows how to visualize a scene and exactly where to place the camera, but storytelling requires different muscles, and the film often lurches where it ought to flow, rarely latching on to the proper rhythm. It isn't until roughly halfway through the film, for example, that Maleficent cracks her first joke, which is so out of character that it initially sounds like a blooper, while the film avoids the 2-hour-plus bloat of Oz and the Huntsman. This is a story that would actually benefit from some slow-paced indulgence, or at least better instincts for where to make cuts. For example, an expensive-looking yet utterly inconsequential battle sequence plopped into the middle of the Pixies. Maleficent neutralized a squadron of nameless soldiers with neither motivation nor consequences, but the scenes in which she bonds with the 16-year-old Aurora Elle Fanning, ostensibly the most important emotionally weighty relationship in the film, feel rough and rushed, while Fanning's Aurora is relegated to a supporting role, and Brenton Thwaites' Prince Philip a glorified cameo. Jolie is perfectly cast. In the Lead End does excellent work despite substantial physical constraints. She spends the entire film wearing a prosthetic nose, cheeks, teeth, and ears with moon-sized contact lenses and a bulky set of horns. Satifer Hakup magician Rick Baker eyes. In stellar form here, her movements are often strictly dictated by how best to frame her silhouette. She has few lines that aren't delivered as monologue, and her most frequent co-stars are digitally rendered creatures that she manages to command the screen as well as she does. in spite of all this, is rather remarkable. It's also a performance that begs for flourishes of high camp that the film rarely allows when Jolie is let loose to really bare her fangs, such as her nearly word-for-word recreation of Maleficent's first scene from the Disney original. She strips the paint from the walls. Her primary deviation from the script here offers a peek at the kind of unhinged delight this story could have been. In braver hands, as she forces Stefan to his knees and hisses, "I like you begging, do it again," like a proper Reaper Bond dominatrix, yet one is much more likely to see her wordlessly glowering from behind trees and palace walls as though just another finely crafted visual effect. As for the actual effects themselves, the level of craft on display here is exquisite, from the swooping shots around Stefan's castle to the lava lamp-like floral arrangements that dot. Armies of art directors, costumers, and effects technicians aim for the spectacular with every shot and nail it with impressive consistency musically. James Newton Howard's sweeping score locates a nice sweet spot somewhere between Eric Cornold and Danny Elfman, and Lana Del Rey's gothy take on the Sleeping Beauty showstopper, Once Upon a Dream, makes for a fitting closer. Extra information when the reviews began to materialize for Maleficent when it was out in the cinema. I was disappointed to see many of them were negative, claiming the film to be style over substance, and just not very good. I waited it out and picked the Blu-ray up recently, finally sitting down, ignoring the words of numerous poor reviews. I've read to make my own mind up about this live-action movie based on the villain character from Sleeping Beauty, a Disney-produced live-action film with a big budget and a high-profile cast could go either ways. So I was ready for anything directed by Robert Stromberg, Gash's first foray into film directing. Stromberg's previous work in film belongs to visual effects roles, including work on major motion pictures like Life of Pi, Shutter Island, Pan's Labyrinth, television work on shows such as Game of Thrones, and so much more. The visual magnificence of this film can be attributed to this, with Stromberg obviously having a passion in history and visualizations of worlds. That is something I will say. Before I even go into the review properly, Maleficent looks fantastic. The story isn't the deepest stone in the world, but I was happy with it to a degree. It was easygoing and had enough about it to hold my attention on a Saturday evening after a busy day. A lovely young fairy named Maleficent lives a life of beauty and happiness in a forest surrounded by fantastical creatures, blossoming trees, bright plant life, and everything else you'd expect to see in an idyllic woodland. She keeps the land on the straight and narrow. But when she is betrayed by a boy named Stefan, whom she thought was her kindred spirit, her wings are cut off at the wishes of a king. When the king dies, Stefan is named his successor, and he sits proud on his throne. Meanwhile, Maleficent, once pure of heart, is embittered and angry at the acts of evil committed by man upon her, and she vows revenge. She takes to the kingdom and puts a curse on the king's daughter Aurora that says that by the time she turns 16 she will prick her finger on a spinning wheel and will fall into an eternal sleep, one only broken by true love's kiss, something Maleficent believes does not exist. As Aurora grows up, Maleficent watches her being raised by 3 fairies in a forest hideaway. The questions are asked of, will Aurora suffer the fate placed upon her? What will the king do to get revenge on Maleficent for her act? And will Maleficent change or be swallowed up by her sadness and the bitterness of what happened in her past? It's a fairy tale with a spin, a twist on a classic story, and I thought it was done well. The complaints I've read seem to fall on the fact that this isn't the story I know, or there isn't enough substance. And while I understand these comments, I also feel like this film wasn't supposed to be the same story that has already been told, and as simplistic as perhaps the story is, it is enjoyable and provides plenty of chance for the characters to grow and the land they inhabit to be explored. It strays a great deal from the traditional story on which it is based, with the characters being very different and the main plot being almost unrecognizable, but for a few obvious similarities. The spinning wheel the character names the curse Angelina Jolie as Maleficentism, magnificent triminote intended, and looks the part of the dark yet beautiful fairy vixen with a heart beneath her soreness elf. Fanning as Aurora is fine, playing the good-hearted and innocent girl who is a victim of circumstances. Sharlto CPP District 9 as Stefan is a little one-dimensional, showing little care in the things she does when it seems she should explore his layers more, but as a character, we are supposed to dislike. And for Maleficent to oppose, he does. Okay, he's an actor I like, especially in his roles in Elysium and District 9, but he could have been better here. The cast is filled with recognizable names as well as those I've mentioned. There's the likes of Alda Stunton, Juno Temple, and Leslie Manville as the useless fairies that try to raise Aurora in the forest cabin, and Sam Riley as Maleficent's ward, Devoe. The cast are all okay, but Jolie stands above them all. It would be fair to say that this is her movie, and she steals each scene that she's a part of. Which is most of them, the world is really lovely to look at, and the creatures are fun and add a fantasy element, which I enjoyed. But there are no gray areas explored here. Perhaps I'm looking for more than I should in a family fantasy film from Disney. But with the good against evil concept, I find myself wishing more depth was given into why these characters are doing bad things and why they have committed the acts that they have and how they live with them. Exploring these in-between areas allows the characters to grow and have a richness about them. This was lacking here. If you love the original story, I can imagine it would be difficult to get on board with this new telling of the classic tale. It is very different, and some of the twists don't really improve anything. I enjoyed the layers that were given to Maleficent here and how the spotlight was placed on the villain, but the rest of the characters play an obvious second fiddle and can at times feel like props with arms and legs rather than living, breathing inhabitants of the story. If you can look past the original film and accept this for something very different, yet still charming and entertaining, then you may just end up with an opinion of the film like mine. I had fun with this and enjoyed seeing a character who was evil and demented being rewritten with a sympathetic background. It is obvious why many people were upset by the film. People don't like change for me. I thought it looked great, and the lead performance was very good. Give it a shot. You might Digitaire Visionist take on Disney's animated classic Sleeping Beauty, 1959 by way of the Broadway hit Wicked. The live-action feature Maleficent true writes the fable from the villain's perspective to make her a sympathetic figure. The animated Maleficent was pure evil in the most enticing storybook ways, and originally looked like a thin Betty Davis voiced by Eleanor Audley here. The titular sorceress was actually a young and innocent woman wronged by an ignoble king and driven to wickedness by a broken-heart. Angelina Jolie brings the character to flesh, but not a life. Jolie looks the part and plays her humanized character with pointed regality, though the forced doses of sentimentality in the film are overly schmaltzy, even for Disney for all its potential. The exploration of Maleficent's emotional underpinnings and dimensionality are contained within a film beset by Linda Woolverton's clumsy screenwriting and a glaringly uneven tone. The film opens with storybook-styled narration by none other than cue a dramatic swell in James. It's Sleeping Beauty, introducing us to a land where the human world lies next to the moors, a world of fairies and fantastical creatures. A young fairy princess named Maleficent, Isabel Malloy as a child, Jolie later complete with horns and feathered wings meets human boy Stephen Michael Higgins as a child. Sharlto CP play later, and they fall for one another as an adult. Stephen's ambitions for the throne drive him to seduce Maleficent and cut off her wings to become king. Maleficent soon garbs herself in all black, finds herself shape-shifting, Crowman servant Javel, Sam Riley, and crashes the christening of King Stephen's first. Child Aurora, she proclaims. Aurora will be stricken with a curse on her 16th birthday. The girl will prick her finger on a spinning wheel needle and fall into a death-like sleep that can only be broken by true love's kiss, and since Stephen soured Maleficent's belief in true love, Aurora would be doomed to sleep forever in the brief sequence where the spell is cast, which is almost line for line taken from Sleeping Beauty. The film is an impressive live-action rendering of a cartoon classic, but it's followed by a long stretch of lighthearted screen time devoted to Aurora's upbringing in a woodland cottage where King Stefan has sent her to grow up seemingly out of Maleficent's reach. She's raised by three blundering fairies, Isabelle, Stunt, and Leslienville, and Juno Temple, largely CGI-based characters designed for comic relief but frustratingly unfunny. Maleficent watches from a distance as the baby grows into a blindly optimistic teen, now played by Elle Fanning, who looks to Maleficent as a fairy godmother. The two become close, and eventually Maleficent begins to regret her behavior. But any chance at reconciliation with the paranoid king is hopeless, and a final showdown seems inevitable. The script altogether forgets about the queen Hannah knew, and instead finds reasons to incorporate underwhelming battle sequences. Meanwhile, Aurora remains a one-note character rooted in innocence. Her late-appearing love interest, Prince Philip. Brenton Thwaites is even less interesting from beginning to end. The film suffers from a tonal undecidedness, hinting at the troubled behind-the-scenes production. Fantasy-obsessed producer Joe Roth, Alice in Wonderland, Snow White and the Huntsman, and Oz the Great and Powerful convinced Disney to shell out an estimated budget of $200 million for the long jest dating project, which was designed for solely as a concept. The script came later once Jolie signed. Woolverton cranked out the story. Avatar production designer and first-time director Robert Stromberg was hired by Disney to helm after Tim Burton turned down the job. But Stromberg's inexperience led to feel-good director John Lee, Hancock the Blind Side and Saving Mr. Banks being hired to assist and reshoot. Additional scenes as a result, lighthearted fairy tale scenes with stare-eyed fantasy creatures are intercut with darker sequences that feel ripped from the moodier sections of The Lord of the Rings at one moment. Maleficent may be cracking jokes with Javel, the very next she's drenched in tears or maniacally laughing as evil witches often do. The opposing tones never quite reconcile, to be sure nothing much about. Maleficent works. Stromberg's fantasy world design is uninspired and unmemorable. The story doesn't engage emotionally. The storybook narration throughout is overly explanatory. The special effects look like shoddy green screen work, with actors clearly standing on a different plane than the background setting. All the while, Jolie looks the part, although Rick Baker's makeup gratuitously exaggerates her already pronounced cheekbones. But her delivery, particularly in emotional outbursts, is overblown to unintentionally funny extremes. Still, the muddled scripting is the worst offender. Not enough time was spent developing the romance between Maleficent and Stefan, which becomes so crucial when detailing the gravity of his betrayal. None of the characters feel emotionally real, and therefore their dramatic grandiosity is unaffecting. Roth's other fantasy pictures are usually accompanied by an ample length that allows the story to deepen familiar characters. Except everything in Maleficent's 97-minute runtime feels not only rushed, but inconsequential by the end. Cannot help but wish that Disney had Maleficent a fascinating villain instead of a dull protagonist. This film directed by Robert Stromberg, screenplay by Linda Woolverton, produced by Jorif, starring Angelina Jolie, Sharlto Copley, Elle Fanning, Sam Riley, Milda Stunt, and Juno Temple, Sly Manville, cinematography, Dean Simler, edited by Chris Lebens and Richard Pearson, music by James Newton, Howard Production Companies, Walt Disney Pictures, Roth. Films distributed by Walt Disney Studios. Motion pictures release dates: May 28, 2014 in El Capitan Theater, May 30th, 2014 in United States. Running time, 97 minutes. Country, United States. Language, English. Budget, $180 to $263 million. Box office, $759.8 million. So guys, this is the review of Maleficent movie and some information about it. How do you like our today's video? Please let us know by commenting. And if you like this video, please like it, share it, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.